Los Angeles Rams are set to face off against the reigning defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles in what's supposed to be a really exciting rematch, the Rams and Eagles playoff game a year ago. In this game preview, I'm going to be giving you guys some players to watch, some key matchups, how I see the game going, and we're even going to take a look back to the divisional playoff game last year to see what things may carry over and what things may not. Oh, and what's a game preview without a score prediction? I'll leave mine at the end of the video. Be sure to leave yours down in the comments down below. All right, let's start with this Rams offense versus the Eagles defense. The Eagles defense needs no introduction. They were the undisputed #1 defense in the NFL last year. A big reason why they won the Super Bowl last year and made the run that they did. A lot of people like to look at the stars on their defense of Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Zach Bond, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. I could go on and on and on. But for me, you can't talk about this Eagles defense without bringing up Vic Fangio, a guy us Rams fans know very well, has been a thorn in our side for many years. He's gotten the best of McVay, whether he's been on the Eagles, the Dolphins, or the Bears. He's just been kind of a weakness for Sean McVay. Now, as good as this Eagles defense is, and as good as they were last year, they did lose a lot of key players in the offseason. Some guys that come to mind: Milton Williams, the big interior defensive lineman there for the Eagles who broke out, Josh Sweat, superstar edge rusher, Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Isaiah Rodgers. So they definitely took some hits to their defense, but when you take a look at the numbers, their defense so far has not really shown to regress a whole lot. In 2025, the Eagles have let up the 12th fewest points per game at 18.5, the 9th fewest yards per game at 300.5, the 8th fewest passing yards per game at 180.5, and the 21st fewest rushing yards per game at 120 yards a game. If you compare this to the unanimous #1 defense last year, the Eagles ranked second in points allowed per game last year at 17.8. They were first in total yards per game at 278.4. They were first in passing yards allowed per game at 174.2, and they were top 10 in rushing yards allowed per game at 104.2. So while that defense last year was built different and they have taken a slight step back just through 2 games, there's still a very good unit and not one to overlook, that's for sure. As a Rams fan, I am very curious to see how this defense looks versus our offense, losing the players that they did. Just because we faced them twice last year, I kind of have an idea of what this defense does and some of the big players that they have. So it'll be interesting to see how this Eagles defense looks without those players after they left in free agency. But when I think about the Eagles defense, my eyes always goes right to that defensive front. Nolan Smith, up and coming edge rusher, very good for them, just seems to get better every single game. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis on the middle, Jalen Hunt on the other edge. You got Azeez Ojulari as depth as well. This defensive front definitely scares me. And then you talk about Zach Bond, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, like they got talent everywhere. So what are some keys for the Rams offense against the Eagles defense? Well, for me, it's going to be establishing that run game. That is going to be a big key, not only to open up this offense, but to also wear down that Eagles defense. I think when you're facing a front like this, as daunting as they are, especially on the interior, you're going to want to run the football. You're going to want to exhaust them a little bit to take some of that heat off of Matthew Stafford, give him a little bit more time to go through reads, and hopefully help him not to take as many hits this game as he did in the playoff game. So Blake Corum and Kyren Williams hopefully are going to be having some big gaps to be able to run through and have some plays here to keep them on their toes, because another key for the game for me is don't be scared of this defense. I think a lot of teams, when they face top premier defenses, especially with good pass rushes, they like to play conservative. They like to dump it off. They like to do screens. They like to run the ball. For me, the Rams, I think the way they win this game is being the aggressors, taking the shots downfield, making sure to stick to their identity with those jet sweeps, with those runs to set up those deep shots, those play actions. We have the personnel to do it, and I don't think playing scared against a team like this in the Eagles is going to be the way to go, especially when they're a type of offense that likes to run the ball and possess the ball for long periods of game. I talked about it in the offseason. I really like this Rams roster, how they can morph and kind of shapeshift into whatever personnel they want to, whether it be 11, 11 and a half, 12, 22, whatever they want to do, they can really morph into that due to the depth and the players that they have. So I think it's going to be key to be able to adjust as the game goes on to what the Eagles are throwing at it and give your best personnel out there. But the big thing for me is just be the aggressors, be sure to take those shots and wear down this defense. Key matchups of the Rams offense versus the Eagles defense, for me, it starts with Coleman Shelton and Kevin Dotson versus Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Look, Jalen Carter is the reason your season ended last year and was cut short, and that was oddly enough due to a Bo Limmer miscommunication. He was a 6th round center, did really good for us last year, but the big reason we brought in Coleman Shelton was the veteran leadership, the way he's able to pass off responsibilities and make sure assignments are good. That is what went wrong in that playoff game, as well as Coleman Shelton and Kevin Dotson are just going to have to be good offensive linemen in this game against a really good interior pass rush that doesn't even have to blitz to get to the quarterback. So these two guys are key for me, number one. And lastly, on the offensive side of the ball versus the Eagles defense, a big matchup for me to watch watch is going to be Puka Nacua versus Cooper DeJean. Puka Nacua, very, very good, obviously, and their slot corner and Cooper DeJean is also very good. Also really good against the run, so I think just the matchup overall, whether they are running the ball or passing the ball, Puka Nacua and Cooper DeJean, some of the best in the business going against it, is going to be really fun. I also think Davante Adams versus Quinyon Mitchell is going to be super fun because you got a guy who just broke out for the Rams last game in Davante Adams going up against a really good corner in Quinyon Mitchell coming off of a super good rookie year for the Eagles. To see how that one plays out is going to be very fascinating to me. All right, let's talk about this Rams defense versus the Eagles offense. This Eagles offensive identity is clear, and it stays clear even with the loss of Kellen Moore to the Saints and having a new offensive coordinator in there. Their offensive identity is the same. They're going to want to chew up all the clock, wear you down on defense, run the football, and when you come up to creep up and try to stop the run, they're going to take those shots over to the top to Devontae Smith, to AJ Brown, and even Jahan Dotson. When you look at the 2025 offensive stats for the Eagles, they are 16th in points per game at 22. They are 29th in total offensive yards per game at 259. They are 31st at 119 passing yards per game, and they are 7th in rushing yards per game at 140. Obviously a really good running offense. They're also 6th in time of possession, having 33 minutes a game. So their identity is clear. It is simple. It is going to be to run the football. They can pass the football. They have the personnel to be able to do it, but they love to run the football. That is the strength of their team. That is what makes them drive. I think a lot of Rams fans look to the fact that the Eagles ranked 30th in passing yards per game this year as a big thing to be able to exploit. But even when you look back at the Super Bowl team last year for the Eagles, they were 31st in passing yards per game. And on top of that, they had the most rushes and the most rush attempts by any team in the NFL and the fewest pass attempts by any team in the NFL. And they still won the Super Bowl. So they have a clear identity. It works. Just because the stats don't really look the prettiest as far as passing yards per game, it is a known formula that works. It's kind of a boring play style to watch if you're to ask me, but it works and it wins ball games. So I think stopping the run is going to be a huge key. I should adjust saying that stopping the run is not, I don't think, going to be completely possible with Saquon Barkley. We've seen what he can do, but negating the run and slowing it down, making sure you don't have those big gashing runs is going to be key. I mean, you even saw in that playoff game last year, we actually had a really competitive game for a while, but it was the 62-yard run by Saquon Barkley and the 80-yard run by Saquon Barkley that broke the game open. I know it sounds elementary, but if you were to take those two away, the Rams really were in that game for most of the game. We brought in Poona Ford and Nate Landman to be able to stop the run, and they've done a great job through the first 2 weeks against the Texans and Titans, but the Eagles are a different beast, and this is going to be a huge test. If you can slow down Saquon Barkley, makes Jalen Hurts have to pass the football and not run it with his legs too. That's another key for me, is containing Jalen Hurts. Because the Rams, as good as of a defense as they have and as good as they've been over the last 2 years, they have struggled with those mobile quarterbacks, especially on key downs, letting them get outside of the pocket, create plays and extend the pocket and be able to get first downs. We can't let that happen. What I'm talking about is be able to stop the run game enough, put enough pressure on them to have to pass the football, and then be able to contain enough to make Jalen Hurts beat you with his arm. I think that is a huge key. And that leads me into key matchup number 1 on the Rams defense versus the Eagles offense. That's going to be Jared versus Byron Young versus Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. I don't say Jared versus Byron Young versus Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson because I personally think that it's going to be more about containing and about setting good edges against the run game, against Jalen Hurts trying to scramble, than it is about getting the flashy sack stats. Obviously, you'd love to see that, but I think it's going to be more about keeping Jalen Hurts in the pocket and about setting those firm edges against Saquon than it is about having those huge stats that jump out in the box score. So that's the key matchup number 1 for me. Key matchup number 2, it goes without saying, it's going to be Nate Landman and Poona Ford versus Saquon Barkley. Look, we brought these two guys in specifically for matchups like this against the Eagles. To be able to win the game, you're going to have to stop the run, and these two guys are supposed to be the ones to be able to do it. Done a great job through the first 2 weeks. Let's see how they do against the Eagles. Okay, when you take a look back at the playoff game last year in the divisional round, obviously the Rams were on the road. They were in a blizzard. They still almost ended up winning the game. They were 14 yards away from going to the championship game, which is very impressive considering where the offense was at and everything that was going on. But when you look at the stats against the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL, Stafford still put up 300 yards in a blizzard on the road. Kyren still had 100 rushing yards on the road. Offense was moving the ball. The big thing was the turnovers due to the snow. We saw a fumble from Stafford and we saw a fumble from Kyren Williams that really gave the Eagles field position to get the points and to be able to win the game. The Rams were that close in a blizzard blizzard, and I believe the Rams offense and defense did get better in this offseason, and the Eagles, I'm still not sure if they got better or if they got worse. I'm going to give the win to the Rams 21-17. I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a really good game and a stressful game, but I think the Rams come out on top 21-17. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you could drop a like and subscribe down below. This is like the 9th take on this video. The camera's been glitching out. I would really appreciate it. As always though, horns up and God bless.